If you have questions, please put them in the chat and I will try and keep up with them. They can be for me or for Richard or for the chocolatiers. So some of the chocolatiers who made the amazing chocolates that are in your box are on the call. I thought it's important to tell you that up front as well, so that you can be diplomatic in your feedback. It's totally okay if you don't like a chocolate. All chocolatiers know that every chocolate they make is not going to appeal to everyone. In 15 years of doing tours, I have had people go the whole range from loving to hating a chocolate. And so, yeah, it's okay if you don't love all 6. I hope that you will, but I hope that there are a couple that you really, really love. And I suspect that those ones will be different for different people, as they usually are. So I will get to the tasting of the chocolate shortly. What I will do first, for those of you who haven't been here before, is just explain that the tasting wheel inside your pack. So this is actually designed for bean to bar chocolate. You might have seen something similar for wine or coffee. And basically it's to help you figure out what you're tasting. And in chocolate, plain chocolate, just cocoa beans and sugar, you can have more than 400 different flavor notes. It's more complex than wine, more than coffee as well. And so it can be a struggle to identify those particular flavors. So this is a tool where you start at the center and hopefully can at least work out which broad category you're tasting. And it's totally normal that you would taste more than one in the same chocolate. Then you move to the next level and see if you can narrow it down further and then get really, really specific in the outer circle. I've continued to include these in the tasting packs since we moved from just tasting craft bars to tasting filled chocolates, because they're even more helpful for filled chocolates, because these are added ingredients. Although that's not to say that all of the ingredients that are in the chocolates will be written on this, because that was as many as I could fit in the tasting wheel without it becoming completely illegible. So yeah, feel free to use that, or you can just ignore it. You also have a tasting sheet, which I didn't bring. Oh, I had an older version here, which again, you don't need to use. I always recommend that if you're not cutting the truffles filled chocolates in half to share with somebody, that you eat half now and then try the other half in a different order or a different time, perhaps tomorrow. It's that's if you, I mean, I don't care if you want to eat it all right now, that's totally fine. But what is interesting about tastings is that what you taste before will affect how you taste. And so if you try these chocolates in a different order, you might, I've chosen an order where I think you'll get the most out of them, but there is no perfect order when you're trying 6 chocolates, because there just isn't. So do we have any questions? So the prompts underneath each title of the chocolate are just to help you in things you might like to write about it. And I think it's interesting if you do take notes, because then you'll see what you think is different the next time. And the score is completely just your top of the mind, what you think, so that it helps you come back to it. So this isn't, we're not going to be judging the chocolate. I'll talk to you a little bit about what we look for when we judge chocolates. I'm a judge for the Academy of Chocolate Awards, the International Chocolate Awards, and some others. And so I can tell you a bit about that if you like, but I've chosen these because I think they're delicious and interesting. And yeah, we're, I just want to know if you like them, really. That's the most important thing. Cool. Questions? Okay, so I will welcome you all to the 8th mystery chocolate tasting. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited that you're all here. And I will be, as we go through, I'm also going to be sharing the pictures of the chocolate, so you'll know which one we're up to. So I'll just share my screen again. Any questions you have, ask as we go. And I am joined tonight, very excited to have him with us, by the wonderful Richard Makin, who you may know as, yeah, that's you! You may know as School Night Vegan. So Richard, actually, his first adventures in the food world, or at least from a business perspective, was running a ice cream company, which quickly morphed into an ice cream sandwich street food van. And it was incredibly successful. He started it in 2015. After becoming vegan, after being a lifelong vegetarian, in November 2017.
Yeah.
2017. He carried on with the business for another year, but then thought it was time to stop selling dairy when he wasn't eating it himself. So he moved to the coast and started cooking and really trying to explore so that he could still have all the foods he loved, and documented it. And within just over 2 years has amassed Instagram following of 136,000 approximately. He writes and creates recipes for Wicked, the vegan food company, and for Olive Magazine, and many other brands. So if you have questions about how to make your foods vegan that taste like they're not vegan, he is your man. No. How many?
That's when my tooth goes ting.
Yes. So I'm curious if you want to wave, or like either using the icon or actually wave if you already know Richard. You?
I know, I can recognize some people, I think, back from Blue Top days.
Oh wow. They're cool.
Ryan is here from, there he is, from Borough
22.
Borough 22.
I make amazing vegan gluten-free donuts, in case anyone was interested. So I'm also curious, how many of you are on the call are actually vegan or dairy-free? Yeah. Well, I'm glad I've created one that you could come along and join. We might do another one after the summer that's just vegan, because it's really fun, and I try to eat vegan.
And now I know who I can trust on this screen.
Well, what I wanted with this one was that it would be open to everybody, and I suspect that if I hadn't told you these chocolates were vegan, that most people wouldn't be able to tell. So that's my goal. I'd be interested in your feedback on that. Cool. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go straight into tasting the first chocolate. And the first one is this incredibly pretty one. I'll hold it up, but then I'll quickly share my screen. So if you wanted to cut it in half, you could get started on that. If you haven't done it already, sharing screen. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you the reason for the warm water, in case anyone was wondering. I was reminded by a good friend of mine that when you're tasting chocolate, it's actually more helpful in cleansing your palate to have warm water rather than cold water, because it kind of melts any lingering fat in your mouth and gets rid of it more quickly. So that tends to work, I find. Right, so the very first chocolate is this one. So now you have a picture of it. So when we taste the filled chocolates, you can totally bite it in half if you don't have a knife or you're not sharing. But I tend to cut mine just so that I can see it before I eat it. So I've got one that's on here that I pre-cut. And so you will notice the center is quite oozy. So I already know what all of these are, so it's all of you that I'm interested in hearing what you think. And so you can put your thoughts into the chat, and Richard can speak them out loud.
I'm trying my best not to swear.
Oh my goodness. I am trying my best not to swear now that I have a speaking child that I accidentally have done. And so I have a little parrot. He's like, oh, sit, oh, sit. I'm like, oh, that's sounding remarkably close, like something you shouldn't be saying.
So I'm definitely not a chocolate expert. I'm a chocolate fan. What I love about it is how perfectly thin the layer is. I was anticipating the layer of chocolate either on the bottom or the top to be a lot thicker and a lot harder to get through, but actually it's beautiful. And the caramel is absolutely gorgeous. Can I eat both halves?
Yeah, totally. Is it a caramel? Because I'm talking, and so it's it's hard to for me to really enjoy them if I eat the whole half. But it's isn't that caramel incredible? Like, would you know that this didn't have dairy in it?
It sort of has a like an alcoholic flavour to it. There's a tiny little kick of booze in there, and it may be unintentional, but I don't know, it just felt a tiny bit alcoholic.
I can see, but I'm wondering whether that's, I know what you mean, it does seem like it's coming from the caramel. It's not, at least, I mean, the flavour might be coming from there, but there is no alcohol in it. But I definitely, so what's particularly interesting when you don't have clues when you're tasting is like you start to notice how many flavour notes you get from other ingredients. And that's really true of chocolate. So when you have really good quality chocolate, craft chocolate, you end up with like some of these incredible like flavor notes, and so they can influence when you're tasting them, the chocolate and the caramel together. There was a question about the difference between in chocolate, like what makes it non-vegan. So in dark chocolate, nothing, unless you consider sugar vegan or not vegan. We could perhaps talk about that later. But in milk chocolate, the milk, and then in most filled chocolates are made with either a caramel base, which is butter and cream and sugar, or with a ganache, which is typically chocolate and cream. But you can make ganaches from water, from alcohol, from fruit purees, from coconut cream. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can substitute, which I think I've tried to create a nice broad spectrum in the selection today. So interesting that you're all getting all of these extra flavors. This is a classic caramel. So it is the only additional ingredient. Oh, I did have a cut through shot as well, so you knew you were on the right chocolate. The only thing that makes it the sort of dairy replacement in this is actually cashews, which would be why somebody, Nina, picked up on it being slightly bitty. So that would be the tiny residue that you will get from the fibre of the cashews. But yeah, and it's got sunflower oil in it as well to help sort of get the luxuriousness of the texture. But it is just normal sugar in it, and a touch of sea salt. I would definitely like eat this one with extra salt. It's not a salted caramel, so but most caramels naturally have salt. It's just when we got into the whole salted caramel craze, we started like really ramping that up.
So was it made with, sorry to interrupt, was it made with like a cashew cream to temper the caramel? That's the fat content in the caramel.
I would say yes. I didn't get it described to me how it was made.
That's what it seems like, because the sort of light grit in the caramel, which is barely perceptible. That seems like it could be a nut.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would notice unless they were tasting it as slowly as we are tonight. So it's it's really it's really amazing. And so the chocolate that is used in this is actually a bean to bar chocolate. Technically, all chocolate comes from the bean, so all chocolate is bean to bar. But it's a craft chocolate made by a craft maker, and the craft maker actually did the whole process in this case. So they bought in the beans, made the chocolate, and then made the bonbon. So we don't really have a good word in this language for the range of filled chocolates, but we also call them bonbons the way the French do. So yeah, that is, does anyone want to guess who made it? I've got really sticky hands now. Probably should have thought about that before I chose doing caramel first.
Is it someone here? It's someone in the room.
They may be. I can't see everybody easily while I've got my screen shared, but yeah, it could be somebody in the room. So it is, as I say, a craft bean to bar maker, and the chocolate on the outside is from Belize. We've actually featured this maker in some of our earlier bean to bar tastings. They do a range of vegan chocolates. They have non-vegan chocolates as well. I should have said that at the beginning, that not all of these makers are only vegan. So if that is a concern to any of you, I apologize. I should have told you first. So the maker is the Chocolatree. So in the corner, that is Ali and Frederica and their oldest child, Rosalind. And they are based in Edinburgh. Ali is Scottish, Frederica is German, and they are wonderful people. They started their business as a chocolate cafe in 2008, and by 2012 they were possibly 2009. They spent a lot of time just traveling around to music festivals and selling chocolate that they bought in from other people. Then in 2012, they started making their own from the bean, and they've won a ton of awards. And they finally closed their cafe in 2019, but they're still making, or they actually transferred ownership to one of their employees, and they sold it to them. But they, so the cafe, pre-COVID at least, was still there. But Ali and Freddie are making all of the chocolates still, and there is an amazing range. I treated myself to a box last April and was wowed by all of them. It makes such a difference when you have really amazing quality chocolate to start with. So when you actually have something really delicious around the filling, it makes it so much better. No regrets. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so if no one has any further questions or comments, Ali, if you're here, or Freddie, feel free to chip in with if it is a cashew cream added into the caramel. The next chocolate is, I've got them on the other screen. This one. So we're going to taste the first 4 chocolates, and then we might just chat with Richard for a little bit to give our palates a chance to rest. So what's interesting when you taste, if you haven't heard me say this before, is that your palate actually starts to warm up, and that's the other reason for leaving half the chocolate if you can, because you'll get even more flavor after you've tasted a few chocolates, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but you get better at tasting, and then it's sort of plateaus, and then it completely crashes. Now this chocolate, unfortunately, when I cut it, this happened, so yeah, I don't have a good cut through photo of this one, but yeah, you can see which one. I'd recommend potentially turning it up the other way if you are cutting it. And I did cut this one and get a nicer view of it, but I didn't get a photo. Oh, the other thing too, when we're judging, we're looking for things like, this is just judging, not like when I'm just enjoying chocolate. We're looking for things like Richard mentioned about that very thin shell. If a chocolate's amazing, we overlook those kind of technical things, but often it will be the difference between a gold and a silver, or a silver and a bronze. We get very fussy in particular when we're judging. But the other thing that we tend to do is, we smell the chocolate before we taste it. So we do that with bars. If you join one of my craft bar tastings or someone else's, then you will know that already. But it is actually quite useful when you're judging filled chocolates as well, because sometimes what we smell is quite often it's different to how we taste. And so if you smell it first, then you might be more likely to, not more likely, you just get different flavor notes, and sometimes you'll be more likely to identify it, possibly, if there are additional ingredients. Burnt sugar, treacle, salty enough to be smoky, woody.
I'm getting with this, I'm going to chip in with my opinion. I'm getting something really savoury, like in a delicious way, almost like a sort of mushroomy kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. And it may just be completely over analysing this, but, or maybe like a miso-y kind of umami-ish. Mm-hmm. But it's good. It's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, treacle, Pecan cake, coffee, oak. I'm getting all of these things. So I have to say, what I love about these first 2 chocolates that I've chosen for you is that they are both made using craft chocolate, which is why, even though the ingredients in the first one were quite simple, and they actually are in this one as well, you get so much flavor. So if you start with phenomenal chocolate, you don't need to add anything to it to make it super interesting and really, yeah, delicious. So, yeah, it tastes all of those things. So this is, shall I reveal? This is a chocolate caramel by Louisa's Vegan Chocolates. So everything Louisa makes is vegan, as you'd expect by the name. And so Louisa started making in 2018, I believe. And she makes all the chocolates with her daughter. And they, like with the Chocolatree, they make everything from been to all the way through to the filled chocolates, and she has won a phenomenal amount of awards, particularly in this last year. She won 2 gold and at least 1 silver and some bronzes in the International Chocolate Awards European round, and lots in the Academy of Chocolate Award as well. And this chocolate is 75% from the Solomon Islands. So this is one of Louisa's bars. This is the Solomon Islands one, but it's 100%. And so I'm just going to see what Louisa wrote in her notes about that chocolate. So it's directly sourced single origin cacao from David Kebu's family farm in the Guadalcanal region of the Solomon Islands. Yeah, so it's got a very rich hit of cacao in that one, but it's just got so many flavors. Yeah, really treacly. Get that. So yeah, that was by being a chocolate caramel. Basically, it's a coconut cream caramel that's made so the sugar's all caramelized and it's nice and thick and sticky, and then it's mixed with the melted chocolate. So it is kind of like a cross between a caramel and ganache, and that burnt toasted nut is from the caramelization. Chocolate and espresso, excellent combination. Okay, I recommend having a little sip of your water if you haven't already. And well, it kind of feels sad to wash out that flavor at all. And the next chocolate is, so if you do have questions for the chocolatiers, many of them are on the line, so feel free to ask. And as I said, if you don't like it, it's totally okay. If you can be specific, I'm sure they'd be grateful for the feedback. Oh no. Okay, I forgot to, did you all see that one? Uh-oh. Okay, so I forgot to put the, yes, I forgot to put the photo in. That is this one. Can you see? It's the one with the pecan on it. I think that should be fairly easy to identify. If you need me to say it again, I can. It's the big square that for many of you was upside down. So we call this a skirt in the chocolatiering. I like a skirt means more chocolate. And so these, as you can tell from the skirt, they are hand dipped, which is a lot of labor. So the center, sorry, I didn't get the photo up. You'll see it in a minute. The center is created as one giant slab, and then it's cut into cubes. From a lot of chocolatiers, it's cut using a piece of equipment that's called a guitar. So it's a giant frame with strings that are like guitar strings, evenly spaced. And so you pull it down and lift it up, and it's like cutting cheese. So it's all nice and even, and then turn it around and cut it again. So you get squares or rectangles. And then larger scale chocolatiers will put those little shapes onto a conveyor belt, and it will go under a waterfall or curtain of chocolate to get a nice even coating. Very artisan chocolatiers will use a dipping fork, which is a long extended prongs fork, and dip it into a bowl of tempered chocolate and then shake off the rest and put it onto a silicon mat set, which means that as the chocolate from the top pulls down, you end up with a little skirt on the bottom. So you were allowed to start eating, by the way, while I was talking, if you didn't realise. I'm not sure any of you wait for permission, but there's usually somebody who does.
This is my favourite so far.
Yay! What do you like about it?
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Well, I just sniffed it, and this is going to sound really weird, but it took me ages to figure out what the smell reminded me of. And anyone who's a dog owner is going to know what I mean by this, but it smells like my dog's paws. The bottom of my dog's paws.
I love that smell.
They have this sort of nutty, cocoa-y, popcorny kind of smell, and it's like 90% spot on. It's so beautiful. The little crisp, the little sort of jaggedy, sugary, nutty crunch. Oh, it's gorgeous. Really good.
I'm glad you like it. It's
So yes, it smells like popcorn toast.
I haven't had a dog since I was 16, but I remember that smell, like when they're dry and you know,
Yes.
yeah, and made me nostalgic for my dog. He was lovely. Richard's dog is lovely. He has his own she.
I was sort of hoping she would wander in here and do a little cameo, but I think she's upstairs fast asleep with her legs in the air.
My daughter's fast asleep. She sometimes makes cameos, but we'll just say she's not fast asleep. My husband's probably helping her to go to sleep.
Jack Sinclair said, reminds me of Chinese food. I also got that. I don't know what that means, because I also smelt that and thought about eating like a Chinese meal. Is there like a sesame in there, or
You guys are good. So we got cinnamon, cumin, these are amazing. I'm just gonna so it is a pecan praline, obviously. So typical pralines are crushed ground nuts, often hazelnut, but any nut can be a praline. And the nuts are usually caramelized with sugar first as well, and then ground down to be anything from like completely smooth, like Nutella style, to really crunchy, or both in this case. So we have the sort of smooth pecan praline and then the crunchy caramelized nuts on the bottom, which is always my favorite kind of chocolate when you have multiple layers. And yes, it is pecan praline with it is spiced with cinnamon and five spice. Yes, B, well done. And the other people who said Chinese. So I like double checked before, and the typical ingredients in five spice are star anise cloves, Chinese cinnamon, Szechuan pepper, and fennel seeds. So those of you who said, and this one, sorry, I said five spice and cumin, not five spice and cinnamon. So the person who said cumin as well is also correct. You guys are amazing.
I think I need to learn to trust my nose a bit more, because I definitely picked that up, but then thought, no, don't tell everyone this delicious chocolate smells like Chinese takeaway.
Yeah, I can see why you might not want to say that, but
in the best way possible.
Yeah, but I mean, you also said it's not like a dog speaks. So.
I also said it's my favorite so far. So yeah. There you go.
I love that, like the nostalgia of any food, but like chocolate particularly just has, when it has so many different flavor and aroma notes to it, and everyone's different, like, and when it throws you back to a memory, it's just, yeah, amazing. Well, I'm glad you all love that one. So this is called, if you didn't capture that with your photographic memories, the Lone Star Pecan Praline. So if you did see that, nobody got the clue about it being cumin and five spice, so you're all fantastic. Well done. It's made by Anthony Ferguson in the top right there. The company is called Nico V, which is after his son. Anthony started making chocolates in 2003, so before his son was born in 2008. And he actually used to work in aerospace engineering and tech. And then after 9/11, decided to rethink what he wanted to do with his life, a bit like many of us, maybe after the pandemic, or within this pandemic. And he went and studied with a British chocolatier who's in what I hadn't heard of, the Candy Hall of Fame in the US, which sounds pretty cool. And then after Nico was born, he and his ex-partner moved to London to be nearer to her family and started selling chocolates. But what he really has done since I first met him soon after that, I think we met in 2010 first, when he was selling his chocolates at the market that used to be at South Bank, and is to make sure that all of the chocolate he uses is organic and sort of as ethical as possible. He buys lots of products direct, and really is passionate about his environmental impact as well. So he sells, and the social and community aspect too. So he sells his chocolates in markets, so in Stoke Newington and I think Bromley, but also online as well. And he makes brownies and other delicious things as well. But he's especially well known for his pralines and his caramel. And he's just created a vegan caramel as well, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm excited about.
I think I've met this guy, and I think he also used to trade at Broccoli. broccoli market, and maybe he still does.
I think he still does, yeah. I don't know. Are you there, Anthony? Feel free to chip in if you are. Okay, so I want to keep eating these. So the next chocolate we're going to taste. This one. Disappointed. I had a really beautiful photo of the pecan praline that I didn't quite get uploaded into my PowerPoint. Is the pink one, the pink geometric dome. And this is what it looks like inside, which is a big clue. I don't know if any of you picked up in the last one, the vanilla was really, when I first tried the pecan praline, I really noticed the vanilla, but when I tried it just now, I didn't notice the vanilla at all. It's so interesting how every time you taste something, it tastes different. I will show you the cut through because it's, so we look at things like the chocolate coming away from the edge, but that's just my cutting skills there. Whiskey, interesting. I'm going to let a few more people guess before I start giving you some feedback. That is hilarious. I have to look something up. But okay.
I'm definitely getting pink peppercorns as well.
As soon as, like, if you keep biting, as soon as you find one, it's like, it's super obvious. It's like really subtle, and then you actually bite into one, and it's
a little surprise. It's nice. It's like a Kinder egg.
What I found really interesting is that center, you can probably tell what it is. Anyone want to confirm what the bit in the middle is?
Oh, are you asking me? Sorry.
No, anyone. Thomas, yeah, April, yeah. It's a pistachio. So there's a whole pistachio inside each one. That's the only bit of the pistachio. But I found when I was eating it, it almost felt like I was eating, like, when I first tried this chocolate, I hadn't actually bitten into pink peppercorn. But then when I bit into the pistachio, I thought that's what like made me realize it was pink peppercorn, because of the texture of the pistachio, if that makes sense. So I was like, yeah, that's the texture of the pink peppercorn and the flavor of the pink peppercorn. And then I actually had a piece of pink peppercorn after that. But anyway, it's kind of messed with my mind in getting the texture of it. But it is
surprisingly though, the peppercorn didn't ruin the, you know how if you get a cardamom pod when you're eating a curry and it just ruins the whole rest of the meal because it just wipes your mouth out. Yeah. It didn't do that. It didn't numb my mouth at all. It added to the flavor. It was really good.
Yeah, it's beautifully balanced. I think I think like pink peppercorn's not going to be everybody's favorite, but I think it's really paired well with the chocolate that's been used for it. I really like the pistachio. You know, it's a bit more. I'm not sure what the word is. Like just it's got that more like neutral flavor to kind of balance it out somehow. A bit like you'd have like your yogurt with your curry. Like the fattiness of the pistachio and the neutralness kind of balances out the spiciness of the peppercorn. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not going to be everybody. I'm glad that some of you liked it and somebody said it was their favorite so far. And so it's just in case you weren't aware, the peppercorn is not actually a peppercorn. It's not related to the peppercorn. It's a pink berry that looks like a peppercorn and is often mixed with other peppers, but it is a different beast. The Latin word, I looked it up, is Scinus mole. Scinus. I had looked it up how to say it as well, and everybody said it a different way. So, but it's a Peruvian pepper tree, which is kind of cool because it's the chocolate. I think for this one is Colombian. Would have been cooler if it was Peruvian, but hey. The chocolate, for those of you who kind of said the whiskey coffee is often common of this particular chocolate that's used for the couverture. So when I say couverture, it's the French word for covering, and the chocolate that is used typically by chocolatiers is designed for making chocolate, so it has a slightly higher amount of cocoa butter in it than the natural ratio. Most chocolate bars also have a higher additional cocoa butter added to it to get the texture that we expect of chocolate. But if you're making actual chocolates, a lot of chefs have gotten used to having extra cocoa butter. It makes it much easier to, like, flows more easily, it makes it easier to temper. So that particular chocolate for making chocolates is called couverture. So there's your lesson for this evening. Right, this is the one where I thought we might need a little tiny break before we went to the next chocolate. I've already talked for a little bit, but yeah, I recommend if you did have a cracker and want to take a cracker, you don't really need to. I won't be, but have some of your water. If anyone has any questions for Richard. Oh, I didn't tell you made it. I've done this before, I apologize. Thanks, Dom. It is made by Ganache, the painted peacock. So this is actually a side business for Ganache, as a lot of chocolatiers and chocolate makers start with their making. It's, if you want to do it right, it takes a while to grow a business and to be able to live off the income from it, if ever. That's very pessimistic, I'm sorry.
True.
Yeah, with anything in food, really. And so it works in tacks in the day. So this is a very busy month for her, but I think she is on the call and actually joining in and tasting all the chocolates with you. And she makes beautiful chocolate. So she is of Indian heritage, but she spent a lot of time of her childhood growing up in Kenya as well, and has a just loves the marriage of art and color and with flavor as well. And she has incredible chocolates. They're not all vegan. This one is kind of just another naturally vegan. So it's a water ganache. As I mentioned, the ganache can be made of cream or any other liquid. And yeah, so that's the water ganache to make this delicious texture. And so if you're used to having chocolates that are a ganache just made with a cream, you might notice the difference in how clean the finish is in this. So there's no, it's very light and sort of disappears from your palate and much more quickly than a cream ganache, which was kind of coat your palate a little bit more. Right. Anyone have any questions for, have you all get the comment about them being beautiful? All of her chocolates are just stunning. They look like jewels when you open. And so a lot of them are in this kind of dome, geometric kind of dome, and they are just gorgeous. Any questions? Are you ready to move on to the next chocolate? So my goal is always to try and get through the chocolates in the first hour, so that way if anyone wanted to leave at 7:30, you can. But if we have a few questions left over, then we can cover those too. Yay! And my goal is to have a mix of things that are kind of unusual and sort of typical and just outright delicious. So, only 2 left. Right, are we ready? Thumbs up. Cool. Okay, the next chocolate is the purpley dome, the taller dome with the orange stripe. So I will show you what that one looks like when you cut it in half. I should also say that Yugna donates a percentage of her profits to charity, which are mostly for girls in Kenya. Oh, and she's won 2 Great Taste Awards as well. And so we're on to the 5th chocolate, different chocolatier. Any guesses? Yeah, I would easily have 40 chocolates in 4 minutes too. I find that the slower you take it, the more you really appreciate them. Oh, very clean base, grapefruit, passion fruit, mango, and passion fruit, pineapple. Interesting guesses. Guava. Wait. I feel you all. It is so hard to guess. Oh, passion fruit. Do you mean bitter like peel or coffee, Annabelle? Mango yuzu. What do you think, Richard? Are you ready to pitch in?
Yeah, that is. You've ordered these perfectly, because I just feel like, not that they're getting better and better, but the way the flavors are stacking is just making so much sense. Because that was a real. I don't know if you saw me dancing. It really made me very happy.
Yay!
It's so bright, so sharp and zingy, and I have no idea what the fruit was in there, but it feels tropical, and it feels I don't know, whatever the sort of fruity jelly element is in there, it's perfect texture because it's not too firm. It's not like a sort of jelly sweet in there. It's just, it melted, disappeared to nothing.
Yeah. I meant to keep switching back so that I can actually see you all because I'm sad I'm not seeing any of your faces. I'm going to just close that for a second so I can see you all. I should be doing that while I'm talking because otherwise I don't know if you're getting bored or not. So there are so many of you. Hi. Yeah, that was a mango, Alfonso mango puree, like a gel on the top made with Alfonso mango, and the base was passion fruit. So congratulations to several of you. I've now forgotten your names. What's interesting is the base not just made with passion fruit puree, but it's also made with Valrona's passion fruit intense chocolate. So if those of you who aren't familiar with Valrona, they are one of the largest craft chocolate makers. Craft is perhaps not the right word, but they sell to excellent chocolatiers and to a lot of Michelin restaurants. They were pioneers really in making chocolate bars that tasted of more than just chocolate, and have been around for more than 60 years doing that. And they, a few years ago, came up with a range of what they called intense chocolates, which are a base of cocoa butter and either fruit or nut and sugar. So typically white chocolate would be cocoa butter, milk powder and sugar. And rather than having milk powder, they've replaced it with a fruit powder or with like ground nuts. And so they have passion fruit, yuzu, strawberry, almond, and raspberry as well. And they are just like massive flavor bombs. And Zotter was the first company in Austria that I know of that was doing something similar with just cocoa butter and fruit powders and sugar, and making these like incredibly, like basically a vegan white chocolate, a vegan flavored white chocolate that were really thingy. I'm curious, the people who, okay, so you're wrong, Dom. I'm sorry. This maker is in London. I'm not sure if that's what, oh, I forgot to say what was really interesting in the pink peppercorn chocolate. Someone said sweet potato, and one of the colorings in this pink chocolate, so I've skipped back to the other one, is actually like sweet potato. So I don't know if you were really tasting that like on the money to notice. I don't know if the actual colorings taste of sweet potato as well, but that would be cool if you have like this hypersensitive palate, whoever it was that thought it tasted like sweet potato. So, we think London. Oh, Dormouse then. Who do you think it is that made the chocolate? It was kind of a jelly, not like a jelly with gelatin, but like a gel. Yes, it is Niblet. Well done. So I will share the screen so you can all see her logo. So this wonderful mango and passion fruit chocolate, there we go, is made by Shawnee Nandi, who runs Niblet, and it, as a company, started in 2018, so it's a young one. And honestly, Shawnee sent me her bio, and like, I don't know if I've ever met a chocolatier who has had such a variety of training. Yeah, from the courses. So she has studied at the Valrhona school. So all the chocolate in this one and most of her chocolates are made using Valrhona. At the Barry Callebaut Academy, although she doesn't use Barry Callebaut chocolate, at the online École des Chocolats, which is incredible and famous and based in Canada, so it's an online school, and also with Kristen Tibbles, who started her chocolate school in Melbourne in 2003, and also she's a trained pastry chef as well from the University of West London, and she's also studied at Le Cordon Bleu. So that is why this is such a spectacular chocolate in terms of like how perfect the shell is and how even the layers and how delicious you all found it, how well balanced the flavors are. I have been eating my way through the rest of her range today. Yes, I know I have a very nice life. And like, I thought this one was good, but the others are just like, she has vegan and non-vegan range as well. And in order to like make an interesting selection, I chose this one and I love it, but there are some phenomenal other flavors. There's a double raspberry, so that has the raspberry intense chocolate on the outside, and a raspberry and pistachio. There's pistachio praline on the bottom and raspberry in the top, and yeah, and even better, she's giving all of you 25% off until the end of February. So yeah, I expect you will all want to buy at least one of the boxes of chocolate for you and your friends. So I will put that in the follow-up email. And so yeah, if there's, it will have the follow-up email will have the list of all the chocolates and the links to them if you do want to buy any more from them. They're all small businesses, so I do obviously encourage that. Right, final chocolate. Am I missing questions? I'm not sure if. Okay. Last chocolate, probably didn't need to have the picture, seeing as there's only one, hopefully one left. The white and red dome. This one, when you cut it in half, voila! I need more water. Oh, hi James, I didn't realize you were here. Okay, it's interesting. Damn. Oh, I'm so excited to read that everybody's like had favorites of different ones. So you know, like each of the chocolates has been somebody's favorite. Ratatouille moment. So did I when I first had this chocolate. It's yeah, you're all very good at this. It is raspberry. Richard, do you want to share your thoughts? I've already told you it's raspberry, but.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I love anything that allows me to imagine what raspberries would taste like if they had no seeds. And I just love like how smooth the texture was, but how sharp that was. That's just, again, that one made me really happy. That made me do a little dance.
Mm. Yeah, when I first tried this, I just was like, it is so zingy and raspberry, and I happen to particularly love anything that's sour. Like I put vinegar or lemon juice on pretty much everything. But it's so authentically raspberry. Like when you get the raspberries when they're just the right ripeness and they're not too tart or too sweet. And it is beautiful as well. Does anyone know which chocolatier made this? I also love that it's not that it's a non-dairy ganache as well. Like it's just made with raspberry puree and water and some extra cocoa butter to give it that delicious silkiness. I don't believe it is a fruit powder, but I don't know. About to say your name. Stephen, would you like to tell us? Yes, Dom, you are correct. Is this the chocolatier you were thinking made the last one? So this chocolate is made by Loudon Chocolates, and we actually had one of Loudon's chocolates in December as well. But I loved both of them. The one in December was not vegan, and I love both of them and just couldn't resist bringing this one for the vegan one as well because it was so amazing. And so this is, oh, why is it not working? This is Loudon, and they are based in Leeds, and it is no egger. It is run by husband and wife, another husband and wife. So we started with husband and wife and finished with husband and wife. This is Sun and Stephen, and so Sun is originally from Singapore, but she spent a lot of time living in Belgium, having all of the kind of much superior chocolates to what most people tend to eat in sort of Asia and the UK and the US. However, I think we can say that mostly the quality of fine chocolate is much superior now in Belgium. Can I say that? But Sun actually said that if it hadn't been that Leeds didn't have any good chocolatiers, they probably wouldn't have started making chocolate. She had a furniture business before this, and Stephen used to work in IT, but they just made chocolates for themselves because they loved chocolate so much and didn't have any. When they started back in 2008, there really wasn't many people making chocolates, so 2007 possibly. So they made their own, and Stephen eventually quit his job, and you may recognise his face from the Bake Off Creme de la Creme, the professionals version. And he's actually going to be competing this year in the UK and Ireland World Chocolate Masters round to see who goes forward into representing the country for the world. So wish him luck. The raspberry flavour is still lingering, isn't it? That's why I wanted to do this one last, because it's such an intense flavour that I felt like everything else you wouldn't necessarily be able to taste as well. But yeah, it's, they have... Their chocolates are sold, or were sold, or served, I should say, not sold, served in British Airways first class as well. And this is one of their newer flavours. So most of their chocolates are actually this kind of oblong shape. And they have they're really known for these punchy flavours. So they have sour cherry, passion fruit. They've got a couple of other vegan flavours as well, and they have just launched, they've got some brownies, which Sun is a perfectionist, and so, like many chocolatiers to be fair, but she spent years and years and years working on a brownie recipe until she was willing to sell it to other people, and a blondie as well, which is incredible. And they just launched a chocolate and hazelnut paste, which is vegan, and it is so good. I really recommend, if you like chocolate and hazelnut together, that you get some and just eat it straight from the jar. It does have such a lovely clean mouthfeel afterwards. I love that about vegan chocolates. Like, apart from that like clean finish, I don't feel like you would know that these were vegan in particular. I mean, you don't taste the cream, but there are so many more vegan. There were other chocolatiers that I couldn't fit in the box or weren't available weren't making yet, that I could have also included. So we've had some of the other vegan chocolates each month, but not a whole box before. In December, the mulled wine chocolate that we had, that was a mulled wine ganache, and so that was vegan as well. Now you put me on the spot. I sent a list to my friend Stacey, who writes for The Independent, and she is has put out a list of vegan chocolate makers. So it includes all of these ones, but another 6 or so. So if you search for vegan chocolates in The Independent, if it's not out yet, I will send an email to all of you if you like, when it is, when it's published, or I'll just send you the list that I sent to her. Excellent. Oh, look, and we've tasted all 6 chocolates by 8:26. Yes. So most of these chocolatiers that we had, if they're not purely vegan, they have vegan boxes available. Eponine and Solkiki and a few others, but I will send you a list. Does anyone have any questions, either for any of the chocolatiers who may be on the line, or for Richard? I've got some questions for Richard, but if you want to, I'll start asking them if you don't have any, but feel free to throw yours into the chat. Do you have any questions, Richard?
Oh, no, it's not a question, but it's a statement. I've just had so much fun. I've had so much fun, and part of it is that I don't think I've interacted with this many people in a really, really long time. And also, this really fulfills my love of looking inside people's homes. I don't think I've ever seen inside this many people's homes. So thank you for inviting me, everyone.
Yeah. It's so nice. I love it that people leave their cameras on, because it really feels social when you have your cameras on compared to...
It's like a big house party, except we all get to stay in our own houses. It's the best.
Yeah. It is. I know that a few people have said to me that's the reason they keep coming back each month, because it does feel really nice and social. I see babies. Oh, hi Jackson Claire baby. Oh, he's so cute. He, I don't know, I'm sorry. Can't tell at that age. My daughter keeps getting called he. Very cute baby. Oh, more people going off to put babies to bed. So I have a question. So has anyone made the cookies yet? I haven't, and I'm going to, and I'm desperate to, because I don't cook. I only make vegan things at home now. I do eat non-vegan things, but everything I make myself is vegan. And I'm desperate to find a good cookie replacement, except nowhere was selling vegan butter. And normally when I make my own things, I just use coconut oil, but I feel like that would not deliver. Is that correct, Richard? Any vegan butter?
It is, but only because the recipe calls for brown, like I think I brown it in the recipe. And coconut oil doesn't brown in the same way that butter does. But I mean, look, there's in the UK, the best vegan butter you can get hold of, particularly for cookies, is Naturally. Does everyone know the brand Naturally?
Not on Ocado or on A1.
Yeah, I think it's exclusive to Sainsbury's, maybe. But it's the best one. There's no palm oil involved. It's all just soy and shea and all of this sort of stuff. But it browns. It browns almost exactly like normal butter would. So it just adds that really nuttiness, sort of pre-baked flavour into the cookie dough. And obviously, also the best thing about making vegan cookies is that you can eat the cookie dough raw, because there's no egg in it. So just now that I've told you that, you're probably just gonna put half in the oven and half straight in your face. Yeah. So
it's B has just said this is the actual best vegan cookie recipe ever. And B, if you don't know, is B's Bakery on Instagram, and is a vegan baker as well, and makes the most phenomenal celebration cakes, weddings and birthdays and things, and brownies and delicious things. She's also my neighbour, which is very...
Oh, there she is.
Yeah. And so she says it's the best vegan cookie recipe ever, then I trust her. Yeah, that's the one I tried to buy, but they only had salted. The Flora one's good. Yeah, I will do some swaps.
I've still never tried the Flora one.
I'll pop around tomorrow.
If you're ever desperate, all big supermarkets sell something called baking block, and it's not perfect. It's not as good as that Naturally that's getting really close to the screen up there. But baking block is essentially just like a margarine that sets really firm, and it behaves a lot like butter. I think some of them even brown, but I don't know if that's guaranteed across all brands. But I use that a lot in making cakes and cookies and stuff like that. If you can't get hold of anything fancy.
Like when I was growing up, we would buy Kofa, it's called, which is basically just coconut oil blocks. It was in Australia, so I'm not sure if they had something similar here, but we used to make these like Rice Krispie cornflake treats, anyway, with chocolate as well. It was great. Psyllium husk, I got mine online. But yeah, the problem with flaxseed is it does kind of give a bit of a taste. So yeah, psyllium husk is cool.
Flax is great. I think it's people's. It's a sort of, it's a gateway egg replacement. It sort of brings people in because it does a great thing. And I only just learned recently about sieving out the sort of actual seeds, so you can allow it to gel, but then pass it through a sieve, and then just use the flax gel as an egg replacement. And that way you don't get the sort of texture, you don't get the crunch. But it still has that kind of bitter flavor that flax seeds have, and flax seeds, like ground almonds, they go off really quickly. So you've got to be careful with it. But psyllium husks last way longer. They have zero flavor, zero texture. They're way more powerful, potent than flax seeds. So you only use a tiny amount, and I love them. They're real good. I use them for everything. I should have shares in psyllium husks.
They're also really fiber-wise, are really good. So yeah, Metamucil is got psyllium husk in it. Keeping you regular. Sorry, shouldn't do that on chocolate ball. If for anyone who doesn't have it, you can use flaxseed as well, but swap a teaspoon for a tablespoon. It's written on the. I thought that bit was important to keep in from the blurb about which cookies. But do you have a favorite recipe, like with chocolate in it, that you've made, or one that you want to make?
I do love that chocolate chip cookie recipe. It's bonkers good, and I literally have some in, there's a freezer right here next to me, and I have some in here, frozen sort of balls of cookie dough just ready to go, and they bake beautifully from frozen as well, so you can just sort of keep them in case someone comes around and, look, I've made you fresh cookies, and I had no warning. I do love that recipe. I am working on, and it will be published shortly, but on a brownie recipe. And the sort of holy grail of vegan baking is a brownie recipe that has that sort of shiny, crackly top on top. And I've been told for years and years and years that comes from egg whites, and comes from the sort of emulsification of the egg whites and the cocoa butter and all of this sort of stuff. Not cocoa butter, butterfat. And it's not true. It turns out that's not what it is at all. It's just about how well your sugar dissolves. And so I've figured it out, and I've cracked it, and I've finally got a glossy, crackly topped vegan brownie on the way.
So I was experimenting with the first lockdown when I wasn't doing these tastings and had a little bit more time. And I made a recipe 6 times. And I still think the first version I made was the best, with like aquafaba and sugar, like really making a meringue out of it. But it crumbled, like I couldn't get it to hold together. And I didn't care, but my husband thought it was not quite, it needed to be. So yeah, I'll be interested to see if you figured that out.
That's where aquafaba doesn't really stand up as a sort of all-round egg replacer. And I think as a vegan, it's ironic really. As a vegan, I've really come to realize what a wonder ingredient eggs are, because they do so much. They bind, they emulsify, they give stuff rise, they do so many things. And I don't think there's one vegan ingredient that can do all of those things. So you do have to figure out, if you're converting a recipe from non-vegan to vegan, what's the egg doing in this? What's it bringing to the recipe? And then figure out which replacement to use accordingly. But I think in a brownie recipe, psyllium husk or flaxseed work brilliantly, because it keeps it gooey and dense and nice,
I put flaxseed in, and it just changed the taste. And I'd rather have it crumbly. But I think psyllium husk I should have tried. I
give it a try.
I'll try it with psyllium husk instead. There's questions. I'm missing the questions.
Let's see.
There was one question for you further up about non-chocolate. As you develop vegan recipes, do you find there's a pull to replace dairy or meat recipes with what you design, or can you see it, or is there enough of the focus on vegan cooking styles that are not based on meat or dairy originals?
Oh, I see.
Replacement, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my tagline on Instagram is anything you can cook, I can cook vegan. So I'm very much about trying to find those things that you thought you were going to have to say goodbye to as a transitioning vegan, and sort of get something as close as possible to those you know, create an analog for whatever those things are. And I don't know, I take a lot of flack for that, because on one side the vegans say, no, you should just be eating vegetables. I don't want to pretend to eat meat anymore. I'm not a meat eater. But then on the other side, I miss those things. I miss eating those recipes. And I've got old, you know, lasagna recipes that my mum used to make and all of that stuff that I don't want to say goodbye to. So I don't feel any shame in sort of doing replacement recipes. I think food culture in general is so tied to our senses of comfort and joy, that if I can tap into that, it will make us all a little bit happier and all a bit more likely to experiment with cooking vegan food instead.
I don't know if she's gone, but I think I may have missed her, but I wanted to say happy birthday to Eleanor, but she made me not here anymore. Are you still here? Let's do it anyway. We'll go a big wave to Eleanor. Happy birthday, 80! Yay! It'll be on the YouTube even if she's not still here. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. You won't all be on the YouTube, but I will confirm that you all waved. Thanks. There was a question about how to extend the shelf life. So the water activity. So cream being so high in fat tends to last longer. I'm guessing that's less of a question for Richard than some of the chocolatiers. I don't know if anyone wants to chip in to that. Stephen, are you still around? Are you able to talk about shelf life on vegan chocolates?
Hello?
Did you see the question?
I missed the question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great, thanks.
Sure.
It's about the shelf life on, I've now lost it. Where's my chat gone?
Cool. If it's relating to how long a shelf life is determined, or? Yeah,
how to extend it on vegan, because generally vegan shelf life, like when you cut out the dairy, doesn't last as long. Water ganaches.
It's all to do with controlling the water content, and it's actually the free water, so those that are not bound up by sugars. So you know, you can add a little bit of invert sugar or honey if you wanted to keep it natural, or the same thing. And yeah, it's just about reducing the water content of the overall recipe, and generally the free water. So it just depends what you're trying to achieve. If it's something for a couple of weeks, it's, you know, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you're looking at a recipe for 3 months, then you've got challenges, but not impossible.
That's good to know. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more longer shelf life vegan chocolates now, which makes sense, like the sugar balance.
Yeah, and we've got one that we use some coconut milk that we don't use. It's not a very strong in coconut flavor. And we just balance that with some invert sugar and some nice chocolate. Really simple recipe, and we're testing it around about 3 months on a shelf life as just a plain truffle.
Oh, wow, 3 months, that's amazing.
And the raspberry one that you tasted today, because it's got such a high acidity as well, that's also keeping the mold growth right down. So we've got a relatively decent shelf life on that of around 6 to 8 weeks. And given that there's quite a lot of water in it, you would normally think it's probably around about 3 weeks, but we've got it at least double.
Is that partly because of the pectin in the raspberries, or?
No, just the acidity. It's quite acidic, and we keep it acidic on purpose because it's our style. We quite like that punchiness, and you just get that nice clean flavor. But yeah.
Cool, thank you. And it's raspberry puree rather than powder. Is that right, or is it powder?
No, so there's a few trade secrets in it, which my wife would kill me. She's super protective.
I've met son. Don't say anything. Shh.
Yeah. She's downstairs cooking, so my dinner for later. In fact, but it's more to do with the technique of what's done with the raspberries and how we concentrate that flavor. And that's all I can really say. It's a special technique that we don't oxidize the raspberry, so you don't lose the taste of the raspberry. If you boil raspberries, when you're making a jam, they oxidize very quick and you lose some of that fruit flavor. Yeah,
it is amazing. I just saw that Yugna from Painted Peacock said that you can get psyllium husk from Indian shops, and that's sometimes called isobgal. Sorry, ISOBGAL. Those of you just on the YouTube recording, you don't get to see the chat. And another question for Richard about vegan caramel. Do you have any top tips on how to make a spreadable vegan caramel?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I used to make a caramel for Blue Top for my old ice cream company that everyone went bonkers for, and it was literally just caramelized, not even any water, a dry caramel, a double cream. And so it's a very easy make, but now I can't do it because obviously I can't use double cream. But it's all about trying to replicate double cream as closely as you can to temper the caramelized sugar. And I find that a blend of cashew cream and coconut cream, like the sort of top from the can of the coconut milk, works really well. And I've got a recipe on my blog for caramel brownies. So they were based on Fatty's Bakery's Goldmine brownies, and the caramel recipe in there is exactly what I'm describing. So if you're after making a nice vegan caramel, I mean, some of the ones I've tasted today are like miles better than mine, but yeah, a sort of a decent vegan caramel, check out my blog and just search for Goldmine and it'll come up.
Yeah, I made a date caramel with, so no sugar in it, but it was dates, cashews, and the cream from the coconut, and it worked really well. I've got a Vitamix, the like super high speed blender, and I put it on the 5 minutes the soup thing for that, and it was, I think I put a tiny bit of corn flour in, can't remember, but it was amazing.
In response to Florin, this is connected, I guess, but in response to Florin's message, I have tried the Elmley plank cream and it's great, but when you heat it up, it loses any of that sort of viscosity. It goes very thin, and it also loses any of its, what's the right word, opaqueness. It just goes completely transparent. So you get a caramel that still just looks like melted sugar. It doesn't get that sort of creamy golden brown color to it. So that's where I find the sort of cashew coconut milk blend works best.
Makes sense, yeah, a bit more fat in it. So Richard, what inspired you to do what you do?
Oh gosh, I guess I just can't bear thinking about not being surrounded by food all day. I don't know. Well, I used to share a professional kitchen with a really amazing vegan street food company called Eat Che. I don't know if anyone's tried them. It's vegan Vietnamese stuff in London, and they're just the bomb. They're absolutely incredible. And I think they were the first two vegans that I ever spent any actual extended period of time with, and we basically lived together the amount of time I used to spend in that kitchen. And not only was their food brilliant and they used to feed me lunch all the time, but they were just the nicest people in the world, and there was no pressure, there was no pushiness, there was no preaching or anything. They just sort of led by example and showed that vegan food wasn't necessarily A, something to be afraid of, and B, something to be like pushed on people, because you don't have to. If you can just sort of demonstrate your own passion for vegan food, that's the best way to influence anybody. And so I guess when I started to eat vegan, I was vegetarian from like 6 or whatever, so it wasn't a huge transition for me. It was fairly easy, but I just sort of wanted to get people. It's horrible to be afraid of stuff, and it's horrible to be intimidated by areas of cooking that you don't need to be intimidated by. And so I wanted to sort of just remove some of that smoke and mirrors, and remove some of and actually, weirdly, there's a lot of people in the vegan community that like those smoke and mirrors, because they like to make it feel exclusive and like to make it feel like it's something that you really have to work for to be a member of. And the truth is, you don't. You just sort of have to love food, and or not, you know, just eat Beyond Burgers every day, so whatever. But you know, I loved cooking, and I wanted to help other people do the same thing, and being vegan shouldn't stop that.
It's funny, that's a big part of what inspired me, except for being around chocolate all the time. It's like, the more chocolate, how can I get to eat chocolate and call it work?
Yeah, exactly.
But also for me, it was a similar kind of thing, in that wanting to, when I first tried the it was a Valrhona chocolate. Well, like, Lindor blew my mind when I was 15, but then when I tried Valrhona when I was like 21 or something, I was just blown away by how much flavor the chocolate could have, without having any added ingredients. And then realized how much of, like, the supply chain was different, and then the craft makers started coming up. But I really wanted to show people, like, how crap candy bars were compared to the good chocolate, but without, like, telling them that they shouldn't eat the candy bars, because, like, I don't, you've got to do what you want to do, and if people enjoy them, that's totally fine. But sometimes they just aren't aware of how much more flavor and fun you can get from the premium craft artisan chocolate. And so if I could just show it, then they could make up their own mind. Yeah, and I like connecting with people as well, which is, like, the great thing about the tours and now the tastings, and getting to see people's faces and hear their thoughts. And yeah, Valrhona is, I'll type it in. It's based on the Rhone Valley in France.
I have to say, one of the things I do really miss as a vegan is just a really, you're going to hate me for this, Jen, but a really crappy chocolate bar, like a Boost. A Boost used to be my all-time favorite, and I just miss, like, knowing it's going to be really, really sweet and a bit waxy, and just enjoying it anyway, like in a service station, just on my own in the car. Like, I don't get to do that anymore, because there's no, I mean, there's Vego, which is the sort of hazelnut fella, and that's delicious, but it doesn't have that sort of, like, this cost 20p sort of vibe about it.
That's true. The first bite of those bars, when I've had them since, like, I'm like, oh yes, but then, like, straight after, I'm like, there's so much sugar, and, like, where's the chocolate? When I used to design McFlurries for McDonald's, and I was eating those kind of candy bars for work, and I'd keep 100% chocolate at my desk, because I just need to, like, make it something like the kind of cocoa content I was used to having by eating the 100% afterwards to balance it out. It's weird, but have you had oh, now my brain's Wellbeing Company? They, again, yes. It's not cheap, but it's very very much like still a premium milk chocolate, but a very like classic milk chocolate taste. And they have a peanut sort of Snickersy style bar that's really cool. Might not hit the spot you're looking for, but it's worth seeking out. They've just opened their factory to the public well, they did in October. Obviously it's closed again now, in the docks in London. Yeah, the vegan community do fight for a lot of industrialized food options. Yes, and Dom makes he designs the chocolate options for the Naked Food Company, NAKD.
Oh, nice.
Sugar. So like, definitely not the cheap candy, but yeah, the raspberry one's really cool with those. Does anyone have any more questions? Feel free to repeat it if I've missed it, because it's hard to I'm finding it hard to scan through the comments, so feel free, if it's not annoying, to type it again if I haven't answered your question yet. No more questions?
Johannes says, do I use psyllium husk instead of flaxseed in cakes? I use psyllium husk in everything. I don't use flaxseed. I often mention flaxseed in recipes because I know that it's easier for people to get hold of, and it's usually something that they've heard of rather than psyllium husks. But psyllium husks work brilliantly in cake batters, and actually I've had better cake batters and better cakes texture-wise since I started using psyllium husks over egg, because you get this beautiful, beautiful bounce from it and this really, really even crumb. And if you follow any of my cake recipes from the blog, you'll see that I recommend that you blend all of your wet ingredients together in like a high-speed blender before adding them to the dry ingredients. And that's because the psyllium husks really help to emulsify everything together, so your batter doesn't split, and you get this beautiful, beautiful lift and this gorgeous sort of bouncy texture. So yeah, I do use psyllium husks in cakes, and it works great.
And just a tip from me, do follow the recipe exactly with psyllium husks, because a little goes a long way. And I was making a cheese sauce, and too much psyllium husk. Just like, should have deep fried it, frankly. It was very, very stodgy. So with any hemp seeds, I think only nutritional. Richard, do they add anything as an ingredient that sort of structurally helps?
I don't really cook with hemp seeds that often. I tend to use them in porridge and granola and on breakfast cereal and stuff like that. But smoothies, I tend to use them for nutritional purpose. I don't know if they have a fancy cooking or baking purpose.
I don't think they do, but they're good because like omega-3 or 6, 9. They're good for the fats.
Who knows? Prime numbers. I don't know. And Jugna said as well, standard ratio per egg for psyllium husk. Yeah, I would use probably, it's like with flaxseed, so you have to hydrate the husks in water before you add it to like a batter or something. And I would use 1 teaspoon of psyllium husks, and if you're using psyllium husk powder, which is even more potent, only like half a teaspoon per egg in the recipe, and maybe hydrate it with like 2 or 3 teaspoons of water per egg.
Thank you. That's awesome. Right, well, if no one has any more questions, I will, yeah, it's so lovely to see people's gorgeous faces. I agree, Ryan. And I will let Richard get some rest before he gets back to his recipe testing. I'm very excited. I was waiting for that announcement about the book. I will try and edit that bit out before I upload it onto YouTube.
You can see all of my inspirations right here. But I'm not gonna show you in case anyone, in case I pull a recipe directly from someone else's book.
You would do it on that's all about inspiration, right?
Thank you very much. This was so much fun, and the chocolates were absolutely delicious.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing so much fabulous knowledge, and thank you everybody for participating and guessing so brilliantly. You've got incredible palates. I need to nominate you all to be future chocolate award judges. Yeah, it's I'm serious, so let me know if you're interested. And the next tasting is the 17th of February. I can't remember the cutoff date, but it's at the very beginning of February. So yeah, hopefully I will see all of you that are not actually vegan, because I'm afraid they won't be vegan. Maybe one, but not the whole box. So yes, hopefully I will see some of you in February, and in March as well. In March it'll be on Sunday on Mother's Day, so 14th. And I may do another one before the summer, but I won't be doing them during the summer. It was very stressful last year sending chocolate, having chocolate arrive and then get sent out, and yeah, I'm not willing to put myself through that again. But I might do some just free Zoom chats with some chocolatiers and chocolate makers, so we can keep connecting if you like that. And then you can bring your own chocolate, and then I'll do at least one more. We've got at least 4 more this year, just to February, March, and then we'll see when the next ones will be. If you have preferences, let me know. There'll definitely be one in the second half of the year, possibly 2 in the second half. Yes, thank you to all the amazing chocolate makers for making such wonderful chocolate, and chocolatiers and chocolate makers. And I will see you all again. Thanks again, Richard. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.